Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, where we will explore what it means to work, live, and play in the Bayou region. Join us as we take a deeper dive into the people and experiences that make our region such a special place to live and work. On each podcast, we will talk to individuals who are making our region grow and go, who are making strides in uplifting our community. This is a podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Welcome to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. I'm Christine Strickland, your host for today here at the podcast, and I am joined by a very prestigious guest today, Mr. Jason Bergeron, our Terrebonne Parish president. Welcome to the podcast, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Prestigious, man. Makes me feel real good. I learned when I came elected, I'm honorable, but I'm still trying to live up to that.
Honorable and prestigious. How about that?
They have to say honorable from what I understand.
I don't even know where I pulled that word from. That was a big word for me.
I was impressed. I'm going to write that one down. You said it a couple times.
Exactly. Well, welcome to the podcast. So glad you could join us. We are going to start off with our usual 5 in 5. 5 questions to get to know you a little bit better outside of the very honorable hat you wear as parish president. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, let's do this. Question number 1. What did you think you were going to be when you grew up?
Astronaut.
Really?
I watched Space Camp, the movie, when I was a kid.
Oh, yes.
And
Great
I was
movie.
like, I want to be an astronaut.
Yeah?
I still would be an astronaut, but yeah, that was my number one job I wanted.
Okay, so what happened to your astronaut dreams?
I ended up playing football.
Okay.
And here we are.
There you go. All right. So if we can get you a ticket to Space Camp, you in?
Oh, man. Oh, I would go.
I got to tell you, I love that movie.
That was a good
Did you
movie.
watch the sequels?
I don't think I did.
Okay. They're not good.
I think I lost the dream after, and then didn't go that route. But yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And for anybody out there who likes the sequels, please don't send me any hate mail.
I'm about to go watch them now.
Right? All right. Question number 2. Favorite movie and why?
It's hard to say one. And some of the ones I like it the most because when I was a kid, like Smokey and the Bandit was just
yeah.
But like to say an overall favorite movie, it's hard to say anything but Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
I just love the experience of what he goes through in that movie.
Yeah. Very cool. Is there a particular scene that you're like, that right there? Which of his misadventures or his adventures did you love the most?
I guess one of my favorite parts, maybe people talk about it or not, but near the end, when he realizes he's a few blocks from the house that he was going to, and he could have walked the whole time.
Yeah.
But because of that, him not realizing it, he got to go on a journey with the people that sat next to him. So you never know, you might be on a short journey, but sometimes take the long way around.
Yeah.
And it ends up helping people. So.
Oh, that's very cool. What a great way to summarize that.
Yeah.
I love that. All right. What is something that you've gotten to do in your life that never in a million years would you have imagined you were going to get to do?
It's interesting because when I look at, what you want to be when you grow up and discovering football and doing those things and getting to play college football, from that to being a business owner, when I graduated high school, it said, where you'll be in 10 years. I said I'd be a business owner. I graduated in May of 93 and started my business in February of 2003. So you almost couldn't get almost more exact than 10 years.
Right.
And so, I guess probably some of the most unexpected stuff is probably some of the stuff I got to do with the Saints. And just, the coaching and having my picture in the Superdome and traveling with the team. That's probably the most unexpected thing because everything else was dreams and goals that I felt like I achieved.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to take just a moment here. I want to look at that because you had a famous career as a coach for the Saints. So did that lead somewhere? So tell us about this. I don't know that I know the whole story about the Saints stuff.
I could tell you when I talk about football, what football means to me, and I hadn't really told the story a whole lot, but if it wasn't for football, I don't know if I'd be where I am here today. Mm-hmm. And when I look at my passion for football and what it meant for my life, is where my passion came out for the Saints because I love Louisiana so much. The Saints represent Louisiana. I love football so much. So I take the two things I really love a lot and put them together. And before I even had the opportunity to do the whole Rob Ryan thing, with the leather helmet, my picture was on, until they did the remodel, but my picture was on the Pro Shop wall in the Superdome. And that's nothing to do with the Rob Ryan stuff. And so the Rob Ryan stuff, my buddy Sam and I dressed up in 2010, the Saints wanted to do a world record for the most people dressed up in one place.
Oh.
And it was a Halloween night game. And so I'm part of actually 2 world records. That's one of them. And so from there, it ended up being another Halloween night. My buddy Sam and I joking around. He had just done Sean Payton. And so we ended up, I was like, I could probably pull off Rob Ryan, wore it. And then, that was a 3-year adventure, including meeting him, meeting people like Evander Holyfield, being able to raise money for charity around the whole Rob Ryan thing. And people connected to it. I mean, I've won the first Dancing with the Stars, myself, Sam, and Amy Kramer as the coaches. We were dressed as the coaches and won the first local Dancing with the Stars. And so probably the most unexpected thing was probably that, because I didn't realize it was going to be as big as it was, just by putting on something for one game and having a good time.
Wonderful. Well, look, I think that's the first time I ever got to know. I was like, oh, it's that famous guy who dresses like Rob Ryan, right? Because I think when you did that, I was still living in New Orleans, so you were pretty famous up there.
It was cool because, we just did it as a joke,
Yeah.
and then it got to be where the news people would wait on us and wanted to make sure we were at the game. I got to meet him, and when I met him, we had went on WWL that morning and acted like the coaches, and when I met him, he was like, nice to meet you. You did a great job on the radio. And then his wife gave me a big old hug going, I love your costume.
Aww.
And so little chat. And it's funny because Kay with the Chamber had introduced me to him. And she's like, here's my board member with the Chamber dressed as Rob Ryan. And it just was a real cool experience just to get to know him and talk to him and just, again, connect with the team, connect with the city, connect with the community. And I felt like, by doing that, maybe I helped them win.
Yeah.
And that's where you look at that involvement. And it's funny, I look at people that kind of dress up now, and I was like, I don't know if they know what they look like. I was like, I don't know if I'd do that now. But again, it's part of an experience in life that got me where I am today, and I can't regret any of that.
Awesome. All right. You can have dinner with one person in the world. Who is it?
It'd be hard not to do it with Donald Trump, with what him being just reelected.
Okay.
And to see what he's kind of going through. And again, you look at somebody that's a billionaire, they're not stupid, right? And so, when you look at some of the things, especially when he talks about Gulf of America, who thinks of that stuff? And so it'd be hard not to sit down with him.
Okay. All right. If you're listening, President Trump, because I'm sure he's probably listening to Bridging the Bayou.
I'm sure he looked it up. I was like, what is that?
I mean, yeah, it looks interesting. I think I'm going to listen. All right. Number 5, favorite thing to cook.
Probably boiling seafood, whatever, whether it's shrimp, crab, or crawfish. I just really love getting into doing that. And my favorite food is shrimp. I feel like with Forrest Gump, right?
Yeah.
Shrimp in any way you could say it, I would eat it. And so I just love seafood, and I just love the fact that we have really access to it every day,
Excellent. Excellent. Well, let's turn our attention to the parish and your role as parish president. Talk a little bit about some of the key initiatives that you're focusing on. When you think forward to 2025, what are the initiatives that you hope to accomplish that when we're sitting down in December and talking about what your wins were, what does that look like?
Definitely 25 is going to be the year of the project. We got a lot of projects that are going to be kicking off. I looked at 24 as the foundation year for how we change managing employees, making everything measurable. Implementing the one-on-ones, removing the yearly evaluations, empowering our employees, having them be involved in the budget process. I've had some directors tell me, I feel like this is my budget, and that's what we really made sure we did, is understood what was holding people up and how they were going to fix it. And so by doing that, especially the first 6 months, but getting into the rest of the year, is really laying that foundation. Now we're going to put up some walls, and you're going to really start to see the house take shape of the parish. And, we got a lot of stuff going on with CBGR, some projects with you guys that we're real excited about, some other projects that I'm real excited about with the Terrebonne steam engine, the fact that we're going to be able to do business grants, and I'd be remiss not have the conversation about the fact that we're 3.5, 4 years down the road from IDA, and we're just getting that funding. And that's part of the conversation I've had with everybody who'll listen, especially in D.C., when it comes to how long things take, when it comes to FEMA and HUD and the battle. It's like we're 3.5 years down the road. We still have an 800 unit housing shortage, and we still have people that, if they've made it this far, will maybe have the opportunity to get recovery from IDA when it comes to being a business owner. It's just 3.5, 4 years down the road. Some businesses start and don't even stay open that long.
Right.
And here we've been working for our businesses to operate through that economic downturn, inflation, high insurance. And so hopefully this is a shot in the arm for our economy and our region, and some relief for our residents and business owners.
Yeah, I think for me, in a leadership position, that was one of the things I think was probably the most surprising, was the length of time that it really does take to gain some momentum, move things along. I know, I'm sure like you, when I started at Fletcher, I came in with this like great list of all the things I was going to accomplish in year one. And I held that list, and I got to the beginning of year 3, and there were still things on that list that I hadn't been able to get to. Some of it goes to your point about just really needing to set a foundation, get things organized. Any new position, you're kind of learning the lay of the land and figuring out where things are. And was that a surprise to you? Was sort of the length of time that it takes to sort of get traction on some of these projects and the funding and things like that?
Not really, because historically I've participated in work with government at both the local, state, and federal level with projects in the IT world. So I know, I knew the bid process. I've even helped organizations write bids and do things they could to make sure they get the best value, not necessarily have to get the cheapest price. And so I knew it would be some of that, and I'm aggressive in everything that I do. So, the running joke is kind of like I never can say, well, that was shorter than I thought it would be, right? But, there's the things that you definitely have to go through, and the whole thing, I think any issue, personally, professionally, whether you're trying to get anything done, is getting buy-in, right? And in this situation, it just requires more buy-in. And so we have our 9 council members that they have to work, and they all have their different ideas of how things should get done, and they're passionate for their district, and you got to have that conversation that maybe something might not be good for the district but better for the parish, and how do you make that decision? And what I've really worked on is being transparent and giving as much information as possible. It doesn't always work out that way, and sometimes you provide less than you thought you would, or you get into it, and that's one of the things that's been crazy for me when it comes to like just the council agenda. I get it at the same time the council members do, but my directors and employees submit things to it, but it's all stuff that really doesn't get approved by me. So, we've worked on a process to fix that, but really, for the first 6 months, it was things when the agenda came out, that's when I'd really learn what was on the agenda.
You're like, surprise.
And it's not that it's bad. It's just how that process works, right? That's really a council meeting run by the council. We're guests in that meeting, as administration. So just working through those kind of things. But, look at the initiatives that I pushed last year in 24, 7 of the 8 passed, and I'm working on getting the 8th one passed right now. So for what I set out to get done from an ordinance cleanup perspective and an opportunity perspective for our residents and businesses, I've been very successful.
Yeah, and turning our attention to that, you seem to have had a pretty good run of success in terms of some of those cleanup measures. I've seen a lot, social media and different things about the efforts that you've made personally and your administration has made to get out, and when you see something that is fixable pretty quick, to get it on the list and get it fixed and get it resolved. Has that been a key cornerstone of year 1 for you? I
think so. Our saying coming into this, and this kind of comes from my work like on the Hatch Grant before, was see something, say something, right? And then eventually that evolved. Our saying at the Hatch Grant was do something, right? So now it's see something, say something, do something.
Do something.
And the conversation I've had, even some people beat me up saying that I said I'd have an open door policy, but I wasn't available. And I said, well, I'm booking, on average 2 to 3 weeks out. I'm sure you understand the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I said, so you can wait 2 or 3 weeks to meet with me, or you get it to me. You give me an address, you give me a picture. I get it to my team, and that's what I'm going to go to anyway. And I guarantee you your issue, and it's been that situation where the issue's resolved before we didn't have time to meet. And that's what's important to me, that we resolve the issue. And again, I want to give, a lot of times when I ask questions of our directors, I want to understand what the protocol is and not understand, like, why are you getting or not getting this done? What is our protocol that we use to make the decision to get that done? And so we've worked on decision trees and everything else that, if somebody would need to answer the phone in planning and zoning, they pull out a decision tree, answer the phone, and work through that decision tree. And in that situation, if we have a high-level activity in one department, people can step in. And, of course, being a tech person, the first 2 things I was able to do our first year is upgrade our phone system and upgrade our email system. And both of those projects each saved us $200,000 a year. Wow. And so I'm able to take that funding and do more with what we have. And we have our website that's going to be upgraded. We're going to upgrade our accounting system that was outdated in the 90s because it's still AS400 and mainframe. And so all that stuff that we're doing is the ability to give people information so they can make real-time decisions and make informed decisions.
That's great.
Yes.
That's great. Let's go ahead and tackle a sort of a difficult topic, right? So, and that is the out-migration sort of from the parish. I know that's been a really high priority of yours. Some desires to move things in the economic development sector, right? How do we entice new business in? We've heard some major announcements around the state, and I'd like to hear your thoughts just around what are your plans to stabilize sort of the population as well as regrow, and what do you think that we can be doing in Terrebonne Parish to make ourselves more appealing to business and industry and some of the folks who are now beginning to look at, I want to open a new business or I want to relocate my business. How do we get on their radar?
So, coming into this, being a business owner myself and really building businesses from scratch is kind of been my MO. I've always, I did the 10,000 Small Business Program at Goldman Sachs, the LED CEO roundtables. I was a stage 2 mentor for LED to help businesses grow. And through that process, I've just learned and watched historically how businesses don't take advantage of a lot of those opportunities. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's maybe just as simple as educating on that. Getting into this, I feel like we can't solve a problem till we all agree there is one. Mm. And that's why I'm not afraid to say in the last 10 years, we have lost 15,000 people, right? Because at one point we were at 119,000. Now you look at why. You look at we had an economic downturn with oil and gas from 14 to 17. Yep. And I know that because in that time period in my businesses, one of them, probably 30 to 60% of our customers lost probably 50% of their revenue in that time period. And through that period, I was able to keep our revenue flat, increase profitability. And then I turned around and created a business to help other businesses do that same thing. And so the outward migration, the 15,000, that we lost, it was 5% right after Ida and 5% probably a year after Ida. Mm-hmm. And some people just don't want to deal with that hurricane anymore. But as you can see, no matter if you're in California or North Carolina, disasters are everywhere.
Yes.
Right? The snow we just went through, some people live through that every day. And so
I used to.
Right. And I played college ball in Minnesota. I understand. People what you think about the snow? I was like, I've seen plenty of it in my lifetime. I'm good. Because it's always that first day where it's great and the hassle for the week after that, right? And then everywhere else, it stays longer. So it's more of a hassle. But, to look at why people are leaving, I really felt like it came back to the lack of opportunity. And that's where I really pushed real hard to make sure that, residents and businesses feel like they have that opportunity. And just as important, people ask me about bringing businesses in. The businesses that have been here and put up with everything related to the hurricanes and high insurance and the economy downturn, I really want to make sure that they have the opportunities, right? So not only working to build, and help the businesses that are here, which I've traditionally been able to do through my different businesses, and also make it attractive. But I think the low-hanging fruit is taking some level of technology and automation and applying it to the industries that have built us. You look at fisheries and oil and gas. First 100 years, the last 100 years, I guess you could say, not the first, but the last 100 years have been the cornerstones of our economy. Yeah. So being able to add technology and automation to those, everything from autonomous vehicles, maritime vessels, drones, robotics, all those things that now actually help with an employee shortage, taking the innovative people that live in Terrebonne Parish that drill oil wells, 10,000 foot of water, right, or whatever, or 10,000 foot in the ground and 5,000 foot of water. Being able to apply technology to those industries to assist, then in turn creates new industry. Yeah. And that's where I feel like the important part is. And working with Fletcher like I have and technology and creating an esports program at Nichols and being able to take, those skills and be able to provide them to our residents. And that's why we're doing the esports camp that works with kids as young as 8 years old, that puts technology in their hands, because I believe that tears down barriers and bridges the gap more than anything else. And so to take the innovative group of people we have here and give them another tool in their toolbox is where I believe is the opportunity, because people want to do work here or want to have business here because we have a work ethic like no other. And when I sell two things about Terrebonne Parish, if people ask me the top two things that I would sell, number one would be our culture, right? We could not know you. You could not be from here. And now we treat you like one of our own.
Exactly.
And our work ethic.
Yeah.
I put our work ethic and culture above anybody else in the country.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that for sure. So what role do you think parish government plays in helping these industries embrace and implement these technologies? Does that fall, I guess my question is, does that fall to the industry to say, well, look, we realize that this is going to be helpful and it's going to make us more long-term sustainable, or increase our profits? Or is there a role for parish government to say, look, we need to help you or we want to help you, and what does that look like?
So when I look at the role of parish president, I feel like it's a combination of like the governor and the lieutenant governor, right? Okay. The governor is kind of the business, the lieutenant governor is kind of the promotion. It goes back to that opportunities. And so I know that when it comes to site selection, if we don't have sites that are available, we're not even on that list. Yeah. So that's where you want to make sure. But when you do that, it's also the same conversation that says, well, not only site selection is locating somebody that's not from here, but maybe relocating somebody that's here somewhere else. And with that, the workforce and the training and everything else that we could do with, again, I brag about, our jewel we have right here at Fletcher, the rock star that you are. But I feel like that in the 2-year, 4-year college space, that Fletcher and Nichols have set the standard for that across the country. We've set this around our state. We've set the standard, maybe around the country, but we've set the standard for workforce development. Yeah. We've set the standard for how our charity and regular hospital system works together, because we just get stuff done, right? We see an issue, we address it, and I think that's what speaks to it. And then when I look at this conversation, it's, what incentives are there, whether it's a pilot program or a TIF program, what tax incentive type stuff that we can do to promote, foster, give people a hand up, not a handout. The projects we have coming online with you guys doing the incubator, the small business grants. When I look at the small business grants, I think we're doing business owners a disservice if we just give them money and say good luck. Yeah. I think that, part of this process working with both you guys and Tita is going to be, let's identify their biggest pain and let's make sure the grants that they get apply to fix the biggest pain they have. Because if we don't do that, that's where they have the opportunity to go out of business. And by fixing that first pain, maybe working on the second pain, maybe there's 5 pains, but helping the business owners have the information they need, going back to the information to make informed decisions, to take that opportunity of funding and apply it in an area that gives them a return on investment. Excellent.
So I want to talk a minute about infrastructure, roads, drainage, utilities. I know that we have some pinch points and some pressure points, and thoughts on where your administration is going in those areas in the next few years.
So when I and that's funny because as we're talking, I had 4 pillars, but when I look at the 3 that support the one, is if we have economic development, if we have good government, if we have good infrastructure, it helps quality of life, and that's been a push. So we have the first quality of life department in the state that we converted from a recreation because I wanted to look at that differently. I wanted the people to think of quality of life instead of thinking of recreation, because when you think recreation, you think kids. Yeah. I want quality of life no matter where you live or no matter how old you are. And so as I look through this and the infrastructure part of that, one of the first things I did, and I say one of the first things, but in the first few months, was sit down with every entity that we deal with, whether it be DOTD, the levee district, the school district, any organization, Wildlife and Fisheries, Corps of Engineers, Coast Guard, anybody that we could work with and partner with to resolve issues for our residents, we did. And in the first meeting I sat down with DOTD was, look, I know you get your butt chewed all the time. I want to have a conversation about how we can work together and how can we help you. If there's something you can't get to, can we step in and do that? And we have a CA to do some stuff with grass, and basically they pay us to do the grass part. So it's like, what can we do to expand that? But also, what can we do to include roads and drainage in that same conversation? So right off the bat, DOTD was like, we've never had a conversation like this. And I said, well, that's because I want you to know this is a partnership. We're here to work together. And if you can't get to something, I will. And then, we had that situation with St. Charles and Tunnel Boulevard where it looks like the 10 Commandments were coming out the ground, right? The concrete was folding up. Yeah. And so I declared an emergency and I said, we're fixing it. And then DOTD fixed it that weekend. And so at the end of the day, safety of our residents is the most important thing. And if I see a hole where it's a potholes in Martin Luther King, I call my public works guy and I said, call DOTD. If they don't have it done within the next 4 or 5 hours, we're going to patch it.
Right.
And that's just the mindset we have to take. But it is working with them, because if we were to cut all the grass in Terrebonne Parish that belongs to the state, it would cost us $1.6 million. And if I spend that money on that, I got to take it from somewhere else. And the conversation I have with everybody through all the town halls is we do not have enough funding to fix every issue we have, which is why we have to make priorities. And even though we may have $3.5 million worth of roads that need to be striped, we only cover about $250,000 to $300,000 a year in striping, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. So we have to do that piecemeal at a time. But I'm also trying to find funding at both the state and federal level, along with grants, to maybe get that done in a chunk so that we could, again, address the safety as it relates to our residents. And we tell people all the time, you let us know about something, we're going to fix it. If we don't know about it, we can't fix it. So when you post on Facebook about it and don't call us about it, we don't have somebody just scrolling Facebook looking for issues.
I was going to say, you can't follow every single Facebook account.
So we tell them, call us, send us
Yeah.
a picture, text us information, and we're going to do everything we can to resolve it. And again, when I do that and I give it to the directors that are responsible, that's when I hold them accountable, right? When they know about it, what's the normal time frame, what's the normal protocol, and how are we meeting that, what I call a service level agreement. And if we're not meeting it, going back to that director saying, how you going to fix that?
Let's talk about MLK. I've noticed, especially since Ida, I think there are more people who are moving north, right? Moving up out of the Bayou area, the South Terrebonne, South Lafourche. And so it seems like we have just more traffic on the streets. I know I've been on MLK and seen, I'm sure we all have the accident where turning lanes. Is there a solution to that?
So there was a study that was done.
Okay.
And so we have a quarterly meeting with DOTD. There's also our metropolitan quarterly meeting with them. And, that's something that I know that is our most dangerous road. When you look at how DOTD measures things, unfortunately, it's a lot of times around deaths. And so when you look at the fact that we have enough accidents to cause problems in our parish, but not enough accidents with death, thank the Lord.
Right.
That's unfortunately what's used to make some decisions. And so there was actually a speed study done that said they should raise the speed limit. All right, that's the same look I had. That's the same look I had, right? So I've been working with DOTD. There was something I'd love to say, but hopefully by the time this airs, there'll be some news about Martin Luther King that people are going to be real excited about.
Great.
But it's definitely something that, between that and the tunnel and everything else, again, we're having those conversations with DOTD. And I'm also offering feedback on this is an opportunity for this to work differently or better. And let's be the guinea pig. Give us a shot to do this and work through some of these things. And if it doesn't work, and look, my whole goal is to make this area, especially the St. Mary, Assumption, St. Charles maybe, but Lafourche and Terrebonne, its own district, a DOTD, not a sub-district. I'm really pushing hard and heavy on that.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping through those conversations, again, I like to ask things a little bit differently than maybe other people do. And I find that fosters the opportunity to move some things forward that maybe you couldn't do in the past. So when we patch the holes on Martin Luther King, or we work with DOT to patch them, again, I got 2 or 3 text messages and 2 cars had blown tires. And so I told our team, if DOTD can't get to it, we're getting to it today. We've had situations where, when Dularge Bridge was closed, I asked our team to go put up some signs letting people know the bridge was closed. And look, DOT's doing what they can with what they have. And I know the governor's doing a study to understand how they could be more efficient. When I talked to him before both of us were elected, he talked about blowing up DOTD and restructuring it. And, I know, and this is what I say too, we have a lot of hardworking people that work for DOTD that live in our area. And sometimes it's really not about what they can or can't do, but the limitations they may have to deal with on a daily basis. And so I know they're in a lot of cases doing what they can and what they got. We just got to augment it, maybe do some things differently. And at the end of the day, make ssure that the safety of our residents is paramount.
Yeah. And I appreciate the fact that you're having these conversations, especially with them, because, sometimes, you hit a roadblock. Right.
That's good.
A little fun there. But, and you stop, right? And so this idea that there is a metric out there that somehow we haven't met, but maybe it's not the right metric. Right. And then having that conversation and not just saying, oh, well, right? And it's asking those questions in a different way and pushing on the system, right, to look or respond differently because our world is changing. I mean, I shared with somebody the other day, our nursing programs have had to evolve. Can you imagine if we were teaching nursing like they did 50 years ago? I mean, just the technology changes alone. You have to change and you have to update. And so I'm glad to hear that those conversations are ongoing.
And I love it when somebody tells me, we can't do it that way. That's how government works. So we've always done it that way, right? Like when you tell me those three things, I'm like, hold my drink. I'll show you something. Because I'm relentless to a fault. And I think that's one of the things that's allowed me to be successful in life and whatever I've chosen, because I'm that kind of person that says, well, if you can't give me a yes, let me talk to the person that can. Yeah. And I also believe too that if I don't get a yes, maybe I hadn't presented all the data to get the yes. I always put the onus on me that if I go to you and give you half the information, you tell me no, that's my responsibility, not yours. I got to give you the information you need so you can give me the yes I'm asking for.
Yeah. I'm going to pivot to kind of a personal question, in that you're known sometimes to say, I'm an aggressive person, or I go after things. And I think that tenacity is a wonderful skill. Has it ever come back to be difficult for you? And how do you manage that? I mean, in terms of your own leadership style, right? And you're working with a lot of different people who are looking for different things from their leader. And I'm wondering, kind of going back to that sports career, what have you learned about that leadership, and why is that tenacity so important to you?
So I say all the time that my passion is my biggest strength and my biggest weakness, right? Okay. It's helped me just as much as gotten away. And it's funny, I watched a reel, might have been 2 days ago, and it talked about getting more out of failure than success. But for a long time, I always worked not to fail. And it took failures to make me learn that, right? And at one point, I was a horrible manager. Through that and identifying that was my weakness, that's when I really discovered servant leadership and really working to make sure that I include empathy in that. And it's funny because I have a little saying about sympathy I'll tell you after. But through having the conversation with empathy, somebody shared the conversation of sympathy. And really, if you look at the difference between the two, sympathy is when you know what somebody's going through, and empathy is when you don't. And so you really got to balance the empathy conversation with that, and work to be that servant leader. Now, that being said, when I look at how aggressive I am in anything that I do, especially in the parish, and the governor even said this, when you're playing from behind, you got to work twice as hard. And that's what I feel like we are doing. And I guess when you look at my experience in my life, I've always felt like I've been playing from behind, always too small, too slow, too poor, too whatever. So having to achieve, some things through adversity has been the MO of my life. And if I tried to do this position 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't be any good at it. And I feel like I'm doing a good job. I'm very optimistic. But I know I could rest my head on my pillow at night that I'm being a good leader, and that I'm giving people the opportunity to succeed and the tools they need in their toolbox and setting them up for success, even though some of my employees hate when I say that. But then at the ultimate turn is to hold them accountable. And so I believe, I had a calling to run for this position. I believe at that time, God was telling me my skill sets and experiences were exactly what our parish needed. And I feel like from the feedback that I get from the directors that I work with every day, it's exactly what they needed. And, for them to have such buy-in into the process. Going into government, the other thing I'd probably be surprised about is that I had a lot of pushback. And the directors have been open arms, accepting, open minds, and have really bought into the process and are now passing that process down to their employees who really buy into the process. And I guarantee you we're dealing with a 5 to 10% efficiency gain just because of that, which allows us to do more of what we have, which should be the definition of government.
There you go. Well, thank you for answering that. I appreciate that. So I've heard you talk about your pillars, and certainly we're going to talk about quality of life. I think that's probably one of the things that really helped you be successful in your run. But I also want to pivot a little bit to this other pillar that you talked about, because I'm not sure that I've really ever unpacked that with you, which is this pillar of good government. Tell me, what does that mean to you?
Transparency.
Okay.
When I look at, we're going to redesign the website, and when we get this accounting system, we're going to have a checkbook on it. And you're going to be able to see how much money we collect, how much money we spend, who we spend it with. And I feel like that's, when I look at the conversations I've had through the campaign and being elected, people don't trust government to spend money efficiently. And that's why you're seeing so much pushback on tax renewals and, the whole conversation. When I when I was running, people kept saying we were the highest taxed in the country. And I was like, that just doesn't sound right to me. So I did the research. And property tax, we're 40th in the state. In sales tax, we're middle of the roads. We have 18 parishes that are more expensive than us. We have 14 parishes that we're tied with, and 10 parishes within a half-cent sales tax. So when you take out the conversation that we're not the highest tax, I always go back to what is your problem? What are we trying to do? And it's really a conversation about residents not feeling like they're getting a return on investment for their taxes. And that's where I feel like it's important when I look at good government to be transparent in that and say, we had a millage that passed, a rededication that passed when I was running for office. That was a 1.66 that got redirected to school safety. And I feel like it's government's responsibility to say, the residents did approve a 1.66 millage. We are looking at rededicating a mill of that millage to something else like school safety. But for the last 3 years, we hadn't paid that mill. So in turn, you end up with a new tax, right? I mean, even though we've approved it for 3 years, we didn't pay that mill. And so that's where I feel like government can be better and offer information to then be trusted that good stewards with the parish's or residents' money.
Yeah. So, and on this pillar of good government, right? And I'm interested to hear your perspective, because you're not someone who has spent a lot of time in government work, and private business owner before you decided to run. I do a leadership program here at the institution, and one of the things that we talk about throughout that program is politics. And what's been fascinating to me is that there's, I guess, sort of two sorts of politics. There's the politics, and I tell the group, it's not that it's a bad thing. It's actually, there's the politics of how you get stuff done. It's the networks, it's the interactions that you have with individuals, it's understanding the processes and how you can move those, right? You've talked about some of that. I think most people lend themselves to the other politics, which has a real negative connotation, to the point where I'm even hearing future leaders say, I don't want any part of that. And I think we're seeing that in terms of the number of individuals running for office or serving on boards and commissions throughout the state. What's your perspective, having now worn both hats? How do we change that?
So I feel like something people probably fail to talk about or maybe realize and just don't talk about it, is politics isn't everything, right? I don't care if you're trying to be chair of the chamber or if you're trying to establish your business. At some point, politics plays into that. And that's why I ran as a public servant, right? I'm not going to be, I'm not now, I never will be a politician. But some people think because that I don't want to play politics, I don't know what it is. I know what it is, and I'm just choosing not to play it. And through that, even I have had to do something in that line. And I look at that as more of relationships, giving people information so they can make informed decisions. If you're going to make a decision, I want to make sure you got as much information as possible. So, is politics when you don't look at as much information and just make a decision based on emotions? Because I feel like politics is a lot about emotions. But when I look at the negative connotation that government has, one of the things I've been able to separate out of it is that government, I feel, is not the problem. It's bureaucracy. And the two most bureaucratic areas that I've dealt with so far has been Louisiana State DOTD and FEMA at the federal level, right? And I look at the more you could take bureaucracy out of those two organizations, the more you get stuff done, and where you see the tide that government can run like a business. And that's what I've been doing. I've been working on getting the bureaucracy out of it and really working with people to say, hey, this is our job. This is our responsibility. This is how often you do it. Make it measurable. And with that, you eliminate that should do or should know and hold people accountable. And where the bureaucracy and the accountability fight is where you can make the difference between running a government as government or running government like a business. And so, again, it's the back room, back door, handshake, you do this for me, scratch your back kind of stuff that I don't like to play or deal with. And again, I just want to be, here's the truth, here's the information, the facts, and let's make the best decision for the parish.
Yeah. So, serving in these roles, and especially, like we just talked about, that there's some connotations sometimes around politics, right? How do you deal with the criticism?
I've said this running for office and now being elected, Jesus brought people back from the dead and they killed him. So you could be a miracle worker and not make people happy. So at the end of the day, I work hard. I know what I hear from our employees and directors on a daily basis. I know what I hear from residents that see a difference and see change. And I know that I'm working my butt off. And when I put my head down on my pillow at night, that I've done everything I can to give my heart and soul to the parish. And I say, you either know me or you don't like me, right? And for those that know me, when you see me at an event, it's not the first time. I've been at events for the last 10 years, right? I go to every fundraise. I've led so many nonprofits between Relay for Life and creating the Alzheimer's Association, all out of necessity, and giving back to the community as part of the Hatch Grant. And, part of the reason why I got involved in this is we were trying to give a free bandstand to the parish and ran into a bunch of roadblocks. And I was like, my main thing with government is that government shouldn't be a hindrance. And government shouldn't give a hand out, it should give a hand up. And I think if we put it like that, if we set it up like that, then that's where, and it's funny to say that we're a community that don't rely on government, but I've seen a lot of people trying to rely on government. And so at the end of the day, we need to continue to be a community we've been known for, which is pulling our own bootstraps up and getting to work and not waiting on government. And at the same time, making sure that government just isn't getting in the way.
Yeah. You just talked about a lot of the different organizations that you've been involved with. And I think one of the things that I have admired as I've watched your journey since I've been down here is your commitment to philanthropy in the community. So you have historically been involved with a lot of standing up philanthropic events, doing charitable work. Why is that important to you?
Because I wouldn't be where I am without it. And when I look at the journey that I've taken to get here, it has been great mentors, and it has been people that were there to give me that hand up when I needed it. And so I've just always believed that no matter through what success I've ever had, that I have to give back. It's a responsibility, it's a calling, it's whatever you want to say. But again, I'm a kid that grew up in a trailer. I don't have a college degree, and I'm not saying anything about my trailers, but look, we were poor. I don't have a college degree. I'm self-taught in business and technology. And if I could reach out to one other person that has that same opportunity, and I can help that one, and that one can help another one, before you know it, you're helping a community. And I just felt like it's always been a responsibility. It's like voting, right? I feel like I wake up, I vote, I can give back to the community. Those are the two things I make sure. And being a servant leader and serving God, what else should we do? I don't know if there's any alternative to that. If somebody doesn't, I'd want to understand why.
Okay, great. So let's talk about quality of life, right? So that's been a major platform. It's probably, I would say, arguably, maybe one of the things you're most known for is I don't know that you coined the phrase, but right? And the first office in the state. I appreciate this idea that when you hear recreation, you may think kids, right? You think of the kids soccer league or the football teams and that, but that it really is a lifelong journey. And so what does quality of life look like this upcoming year in the parish? What changes are on the horizon? What are the improvements that you're looking to make?
So when you look at those changes and what us creating that quality life department, we took TPR, we took our civic center and our sportsplex, we took the downtown Main Street program, which was again a great foundation, and we put all that in one. And so we named those three. We created three areas: athletics and leisure, community enrichment, and venues and destinations. And I look at something as simple as dealing with these nonprofits. If I wanted to rent a facility in the parish, I had to call this person for the municipal, I had to call this person for the civic center. And it just felt like if somebody can understand all the tools that are available in the tool chest, that whenever you call somebody, well, we don't have this, but we have that, right? So I've dealt with booking so many events that, sometimes you use parish facilities, sometimes you use private entities, but just being able to go for that one place, that one-stop shop, I think was important. And really what's great is I gave the directive to the director, and he took the ball and ran with it. And so, everything from, we've taken over some parks, one of those being the softball complex on the east side. I want to make that the Bayou Country Sportsplex of the east side. We're having conversations about putting a cool bike trail in there, similar to Bogachita that they have. And so through working with the Hatch Grant, we were working before I left the organization to be parish president, that we were going to do a 65-mile paddle loop. It'll be the only loop in the state that both can be for kayaks and pirogues, right? Both that tradition and culture and progress, right? So through that, a lot of the quality of life conversation came from the fact that people told me they were leaving here because our quality of life wasn't good.
Yeah.
And when I think quality of life means different things to different people. In one area, it might be a pool. In another area, it might be disc golf, right? And this other place, it might just be the opportunity for a kid to play football or baseball. Yeah. And so identifying that, which has led me to the drive on doing with community outreach and doing some community outreach programs where we go into these communities, we understand what issues that they have, and we bring them things and resources to make them have a better quality of life. I think it's identifying what quality of life means to each of our residents and bringing that to them. Again, no matter their age, no matter where they live, what does quality of life look on the north side of the parish, the south side of the parish, the east side of the parish, and the west side of the parish, versus being in town and really understanding what their needs are and bringing it to them.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and that concept is I think critically important to communities. So when I talk with students here at Fletcher, and I do often in terms of especially those who are getting ready to graduate, and where are you going? What are you doing? And we have that quality of life. They may not use that terminology, but one of the things that they came out with, a few students, I guess it was probably maybe a year or two ago, was this idea of having a third space. And I had never heard this concept. Now that I'm more aware of it, I hear it all the time. But it's this idea that most of us have home and a work, but that we really desire a third space where we feel like we belong and we feel like there's a community there. And to your point, it can look differently, right? For some people, it's going to La Coretta for music and margaritas. For some people, it's hanging out at Downtown Joe. It's a coffee house where they can, meet every morning and have some breakfast and coffee. For some, it may be the recreational district where I can go be with other families with children who have like ages to me. So, I think as you continue that work, or as the parish continues the work, or we as a community continue that work, to keep that in mind is where are we creating these third spaces for people to find community is really important. And important to our younger generations, but I think important to our older generations as well. We talk sometimes about the challenges that our elderly have. I'm sure you've heard it as well. It's the striping on the streets for driving, the lights at night, but it's also the help that I need post-storm, or that as I was telling somebody the other day, like I don't have the wherewithal anymore to go out and clean up my yard like I used to. Not that I'm old, but how do you balance like the full gamut of people that need to be served and are looking to government to help them with their specific needs? That's a tall undertaking, I would assume.
It is, and I've had conversations with my kids. I got a 23-year-old and 18-year-old, and they say there's nothing to do, and I go, what would you want to do? And they don't have an answer. And so I'll go, well, you give me an answer, we'll try to make that happen, right? And so we got some real cool stuff going on downtown. And look, people have different takes on this topic, but I look at downtown as the heart. And if the heart's not healthy, you usually have trouble with the rest of the body, right? Yeah. And if you look at, the areas that have had success, or whether it be Lower Mississippi or Fairhope, Alabama, or Grapevine, Texas, or, there's so many, even Baton Rouge or Covington, right? Those areas that have had great downtowns, it becomes its own economic little mecca area. So, you got Ember just opened up. You got a few other restaurants that have opened up. We have the Bunker, which is going to be like that video golf gaming type stuff.
Cool.
We have the steam engine of one of the projects I'm doing, the incubator that you guys, we're going to work with you on. Like, I think those are all building blocks on the opportunity, because when you look at the Hatch Grant building, the bandstand, then the Rotary Centennial Plaza being built, and now you're looking at other investment happening. How can you not see that one thing built on another thing that built to where it is today, that probably without those two first things, like the bandstand and the Centennial Plaza, would anything else have came? Yeah. And so that's why I think it's important. And I tell everybody this. I think it's going to take all of us. And so you and I have had a conversation about Christmas lights. And by the time this comes out, maybe a little bit after, we're going to announce the Terrebonne Cajun Christmas, where we're making
Yay.
Terrebonne Parish a Cajun Christmas destination.
Awesome.
It's kind of like the Natchitoches, but with that Cajun version, right? And that's why I did the alligators with the Joe Boat and Papa Noel this year. That was that first step. And so, again, just giving people purpose and giving people something to get excited about, because I believe that one of my main responsibilities as parish president is to provide hope. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Wow. Beautiful sentiment. And I agree with you. There's so much research out there that says, especially when it comes to economic development, that a healthy downtown creates a healthy community, creates a health economy, or at least lends itself to that. So I'm glad to hear that there is that movement. And, you know, I remember back when Centennial Plaza was kind of that vision out there. And I do remember that there were folks out there who thought, well, this doesn't, not a great idea, right? Maybe, or might have been a little critical, or maybe just disbelieving. But then fast forward to this past Christmas, where you saw families out there with their kids and the snow.
Right.
Who knew, right? That we would have real snow and not just the bubble snow. But and creating a space, again, a third space where people can convene and be together, whether it's at the bandstand or the Centennial Plaza.
And I'll say this too. You know, people peg me as a downtown person, and I go, but it is also where I live and work. So people traditionally, when I've had conversations through different communities that want to improve, well, the Hatch Grant was a group of guys that got together that wanted to improve downtown, because that's where a lot of us live and work. And through that, we raised money and we built a project. And I think that that's where I say it's going to take all of us, because if you want your community of Gibson or Berg or Chauvin or Gray to succeed and have things, sometimes you got to get things rolling yourself. And that's what I've been recommending to everybody. Create a nonprofit and have it. You know, they have the Gray Improvement Community. They're always doing things to help make sure that Gray is the best that it can be. And that's what people need to do, is take care of the community they live in and lead by example, right? We all pass the piece of paper on the ground, the blighted property, the kid that needs help. Every one of those situations, we have the opportunity to bring the buggy back to its return instead of leaving it next to the car.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the difference is between having some success and having where you have that apathy that nothing's happening.
Yeah.
You know?
Let me ask, on the downtown side of things, there was a lot of conversation about a roadway study. Where is that at right now?
So the process to take over a road from the state is a 5-year process.
Okay.
We're about 2.5, maybe almost 3 years now into it. And the problem is that they have $125 million worth of projects, and historically have averaged about $25 million worth of funding.
Yeah.
So when you look at that, we're halfway through that process. One of the things that we've been working with DOTD to change is normally they do an overlay before they hand it over. And we're telling them we don't want that, because we're going to tear it up, because we need to fix some infrastructure. So now there's a conversation that says if we don't get the overlay first, maybe we move to the front of the line. And that's where, from a policy perspective, that we're trying to change things with DOTD and have a different conversation. And so even something simple like putting a banner across Main Street downtown, we can't do because DOTD doesn't allow it. So, you know, hopefully we could push that forward some more. They're working on a truck study right now, because we have to do an alternative truck study, because one of the main things I think is the problem is getting the 18-wheelers off of Main Street. Now, you're still going to have your delivery trucks and all, but, you know, just constant 18-wheelers rolling through there. I think by getting rid of that, you make it safer, makes it more walkable day one. And then from there, you know, people have talked about, can we do this one-lane deal? I don't believe we can do that until we get another path across the intercoastal. My goal would be to do a bridge from Barrow Street to Industrial Boulevard. That would be kind of like a truck bridge, truck traffic kind of situation. Right. And then maybe if that happens, there's an opportunity. But until then, you know, if one of the passageways across the intercoastal is closed, it takes 45 minutes, an hour to get across the twin spans. And so as long as that's going on, I just don't see that one-lane opportunity. But if we could slow traffic down and keep 18-wheelers off of it, then it allows our downtown to be more walkable. And when you talk about studies, I have a study that shows that return on investment, when you make downtown more walkable, you usually get a 10-fold return on that investment of every dollar. And so that's where you look at the opportunity to, again, economic development, have downtown be that cool, hip thing. And when you look at, you know, I talk to the hospitals and they're trying to hire doctors, and they get the doctors here but can't get the wives here, we got to create that environment, that quality of life that makes people say, how could you not live down here? And I tell people all the time, Just come. It's like riding Mardi Gras. All you gotta do is ride once. Just come down once.
Right.
And then once we get you down here, once you get on that float, you ride for 20 years. I think when people come experience and see our culture, then they see how great we have it down here and how rich we are. And again, you go back to the good earth, right? That's what Terrebonne means. But again, our biggest natural resources are great people.
Yeah. Well, I'm living proof of that.
Yes,
right?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Came down and you can't get rid of me
That's
like bad
right.
grass. When you think about, I mean, obviously you're parish president, right? And I know a lot of times our focus comes to Houma. It's, where probably the largest portion of our population lives. But when you think about the rest of the parish, what are you excited about? So get outside of Houma for a little bit. Let's go down the bayou. Let's go up into the Schriever area. Dun, dun, dun. What are you excited about?
I'm excited about the conversation that we have when it comes to the battle between tradition, culture, and progress, and that's what I feel like all our rural areas are fighting. Right. Okay. I grew up in Berg. I lived in Berg on the east side. My parents still live on the east side. But one of the reasons why I moved from the east side to the west side is I gained 30 minutes to an hour a day. Right. And so it's how do you maintain the great living that we have in our rural areas? And, people would move in north and everything that's going on with flood insurance and homeowners insurance and everything else. But really just having each community capitalize on what they do great and spreading that message and getting people to visit each community. I just go back to that opportunity. Right now, I feel like we have that opportunity. We just made our 200th anniversary, and I feel like now we have the opportunity to set our next 200 years now more than ever. The recovery from Ida and Francine and all the opportunities that we're going to bring into our different communities that give them that hand up. The great things when you look at what this area we're sitting in right now is known for is really Fletcher's been able to be a driver for that. And what you guys are doing are just something great. So what I love is the cool and great things that are being done in each of these rural areas to make those rural areas, again, we joke around at the parish level perspective that we all live in the best parish in the state. Well, we need to have that same love and appreciation and passion for our communities. And just being able to help guide that and drive that into the communities is where I think the best opportunity is.
All right. What's been the biggest surprise about being parish president?
We have a dog court. I didn't know that.
A what?
Dog court.
Dog court. Is that where dogs play tennis? Or is that where
No,
they go when
is,
they get in trouble?
If we have a vicious dog that either attacks a human or attacks another dog, we have a court for that.
No.
Yes, we do. That was probably one of the...
How do I get to be judge of that?
Well, it's
what
actually
kind of degree
it's actually the role of the chief administrative officer, because I was setting up his job description, there wasn't a lot of data out there. So as we collected that data, it was like, this is a thing. Okay.
Huh.
I probably, you always hear that. I always knew government wasn't lazy, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know how much pushback I would have. Mm-hmm. I've been surprised at the open, not surprised in a bad way, but just encouraged by the feedback and the responsiveness and open arms of our directors and employees that delivered way more than I thought it would. Because I say all the time, we have a bunch of passionate, hardworking people in our parish. Yeah. And I think they get a bad rap. And I think that, it was easier than I thought it would be, because just this the stigmatism I maybe had about government. Right. But that's been a pleasant surprise. It's more like business than what people said it is. And again, when you take out that bureaucracy part of it, probably that was the probably biggest surprise I would say then. Now, as I say it is, that the problem in government's really bureaucracy and how easy you can work through that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Huh. Well, that's good to hear.
Right.
I also want a job after.
It don't pay anything.
Okay, my retirement gig. I have this vision of myself with one of those big white powdered wigs and like Clifford the dog. And they're like, okay, this is probably really stupid, but like, right, they're fighting over a bone and I'm in the middle.
Yes.
Like,
yeah, it's,
who gets the bone? No. Dog court. That's what I have in my head.
No,
Sorry.
it is. We had the same picture, trust me.
There you go.
Ask the dog if they're guilty and they woof. Are you representing yourself? I mean, it's just, but it's, it's a lot of stuff that residents don't realize happen beyond the scenes of the things that tick and happen. And, we got employees that are out at 2:00 in the morning, doing things to make sure that our residents are safe. And it's all the things that you don't know that goes on that goes on. And a lot of times the residents don't realize the same things they're complaining about, the people that are fixing the issue are going through the same thing. And look, we had some power issues in 24 a lot, and we're still going through some repairs post-Ida. And I told people, I'm out of power also, right?
Yeah.
I lost power. My generator didn't work. And it's funny, I saw one of the Facebook groups that, we live in the neighborhood of Parish President. We thought we'd get power back first. And I was like, you don't understand. I told our team, I want it last.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be the first guy with power. But, again, we got so many hardworking individuals that are doing everything, giving their heart and soul, working countless hours away from their families, dealing with the same problems that our residents deal with, and just with a smile on their face and hardworking. And I'm just so proud of the team that I have the honor of leading.
Yeah. It just happens, right? You don't sometimes question how it happens, but that's the engine that makes things go in the parish for sure.
Well, look, one of the things I worked on is making sure that whenever residents call, that they know we're there to take care of their problem.
Yeah.
And it may not seem like a big deal to the person answering the phone, but to the resident, it's the thing that's turning their world upside down. Mm-hmm. And I tell, our first job is to make sure our residents know we got them. Yeah. We're going to take care of it. They're going to be angry. They're not going to call us and say, hey, you're doing a great job, even though sometimes we do get those calls after the fact. But at the end of the day, whatever's going on is stopping them from having a good quality of life that day or that hour or that week. And the most important thing to them is that issue. And we just want to make sure they understand we understand that and that we're going to take care of that issue for them. And so it goes back to, again, the great team. We re-implemented Employee of the Month, which then gave us an Employee of the Year. And it's just really great to see the people that, in every business, you're going to have some people that just come to work. But we have a lot of passionate public servants working in the parish government, doing a great job. And I just really want to commend them on all their work and thank them.
Awesome. Town halls, you doing any this year?
Yes, ma'am. So we squeezed them in at the end of the year. The goal is, I'm going to be in this area at this time, doing one a month. And getting out into our communities and going to hear their voice and bringing them solutions. So that's going to be a recurring deal on a regular basis. So we're going to be launching some what we call fireside chats, short of a better name. So because the residents want to hear me and see me, and they want to know what's going on, and we want to keep them informed. And, we've done a lot of great things, adding a communications department. And, I feel like our Facebook is busier than it's ever been. I think we've grown from 13,000 to almost 20,000 followers in a year. And so it's just really working to make sure, when people look at the work we did for Francine, that's what we expect it to be like every time. And sometimes it's going to be, we're going to let our team get some stuff done and post the things they need to post. And maybe people don't feel like we're being as transparent or as open as we can. And after every event, we're going to do a evaluation to see what went well, what didn't. And we're going to fix those things. And we do that after every major event. So we got one that's going to be coming up for this past event we just went through. And we're going to work on making things better, doing things differently.
Excellent. All right. We're going to move now to a couple more get to know you. Although I feel like I've gotten to know you a lot better throughout the course of this conversation. It reminds me, you said something earlier and it made me laugh because after this snowstorm, you and I have both lived where there's a lot of snow, and so I don't know that we were both as enamored with it. Now, it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And it was the first day was amazing. But I had to laugh because by about day 3, my husband looked at me and he said, I feel like I have a whole new appreciation for you and why you moved south. He had just about enough of that. But yeah, I thought that was kind of funny in terms of just, that experience and how those experiences kind of shape us. So, all right. Well, earlier, you mentioned that you had 2 world records. The first was being in the Superdome for Halloween.
Right.
Can you tell us what the second one was?
I can tell you the second record.
Okay.
I went to a conference, and part of that was part of a give back, right? Funny as it may sound. But we put together the most bicycles to give away within like 60 minutes ever. So that was just like a stumbled upon world record, and Guinness World Book of Records was there. So it's kind of cool to get to say I'm part of 2 world records.
That is. Do you remember how many bikes you put together?
I do not. That was a long time.
Okay.
It was a lot. I mean, if you can imagine a conference area and an open area in a conference that's full of people putting together bicycles and everything like that. So it was, it might have been 10,000, I don't know. So it was,
Cool experience.
yeah, it was a cool experience.
All right. And for those of you who are interested or into trivia, feel free to Google that and see. If you find out how many bikes they put together, please send me an email. Shoot me a little email. Speaking of emails, if people in the parish, residents, want to get in touch, want to share a kudos or maybe a concern, what's the best way to do that?
We have a few different opportunities. You can always go to our Facebook. People send us messages on there. You can call the parish, 868-5050. You can email parishpresident@tpcg.org. We also have like a public relations at tpcg.org. And so we have many possible opportunities for communication to share your concerns, give feedback, give kudos. You know, we want to hear about it. And I tell people all the time, if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. And so if we do fix it and we did a great job, I love sharing that information with our employees also.
Yeah, please. You know, it is oftentimes when you are in public service, you do hear a lot of the challenges and the concerns from residents. But if you've had a great experience, please share that too. Yeah. You know, give the person who's your neighbor or who works in the office that you frequent or has just helped you, give them some kudos, give them a pat on the back. That means so much. It means more to people than I really think they believe it does. And so I would encourage everybody out there to do that.
When you look at gratitude, actually gratitude is one of the great things to combat depression. And so by being more gratuitous, it's good to say I'm visible there, it makes people feel better. And they said that as one of the best ways to fight depression.
Awesome. So we can address mental health.
We can.
And encourage people to continue to do great work.
Think about it. I always joke around about when I need to pick me up, I just go to, something like Chick-fil-A because they're always just so happy every time.
Nice. Yeah, that's great.
It's like, man, I feel good right now, So.
And you get a chicken sandwich.
That's right.
That would make me happy right there. So, all right. So I do a little recon on my guests. And so I had the opportunity to talk to somebody. And look, I think, based on this, that maybe you are a break dancer because I heard you have this name called J-pop. And the only thing I can see in my head is you doing a little pop and lock routine. But apparently there's a story behind J-pop. What is that? Other than break dancing?
Yeah, well, and I've done break dancing one time. And look, no joke, when I talk about the first one of the first Dance with Stars, I actually do love to dance, and it's one of the things my wife and I do together and love. We'll jitterbug, and for the Momo Walk, people got to see it. We just both love dancing. But J-pop made me a little choked up a little bit here. So I don't have my own kids. I have my wife's kids or my stepkids. I've been in their life since they were 4 and 9. And they are now 18 and 23. And at a certain point, when my father-in-law felt I should be in the circle, he didn't like the fact that my kids call me Mr. Jason. My stepkids call me Mr. Jason. And so for Father's Day gift one year, years back, they did a little rap song and named me J-Pop. And now that's what them and their friends and all my like my wife's nieces and not a lot of my friends, they all call me J-Pop. And so it's kind of that name that is just stuck and enduring name from the kids. And I just love to hear them call me that. But I'm a firm believer in everything else for a reason. And I definitely believe that God put me in their life. And unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to have my own blood. But I got the next best thing, and all of those kids like they're my own.
Oh,
so
great story.
Yeah.
We love you, J-Pop. So one last question. You love to dance. Is there a song that literally you cannot sit still to? You have got to move.
Honestly, everyone. Like if there's music playing, and I've been in events around you also. It could be country music, it could be rap music, it could be you name it. Just something that, and I love a beat. And historically, I've been the guy that runs the music on our float, or whenever it's something related to entertainment, I get involved in. Whether I'm Leadership Louisiana, Leadership Terrebonne, and I love to throw a party, have a good time, especially when I could tie it back to a great cause. I tell people if anybody's looking for any ideas for a fundraiser, I think Mass Singer would be a great one that we can have in our area. So I'm tossing that out to the world for somebody to raise money with. But just
great idea.
That's what we do, right? We have a great time. We raise money. It's like we have a great time. We look for a reason to raise money for a good cause. And that's something that just, I just love being a part of it every chance I get.
Yeah. And I think you and I are the two quirky nerds over in the corner, just like bebopping to our own little drum beat.
Without music, right?
Right,
Without
exactly.
music.
I can make my own music. One final question, and because of something you just said, being parish president, I would imagine, is a full-time, 24-hour day, 7-day a week. Where do you find balance? And how do you do that? How do you manage that?
So I know, and there's a debate, and I've heard a few people recently say, I always said, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Mm-hmm. I believe in enjoying what I do helps create that balance because, I still have 4 businesses. Some of those have partners. Some of those have employees. And so, it's at the end of the day, I still have to make some decisions and deal with that. But I really love what I do because when people come up to me and say, I hate to bother you, because I still go grocery shopping, right? I still go to Sam's or Rouse's or Canada's, whatever it is. I feel like I got to say them all now as part of Parish president. But which I do shop at all of them. Make sure I love all of them. People say they want to bother me, and I go, that's my job, right? That's my, when I get to go out to the events and the fundraisers and everything, everybody knows I've been doing that. And I did that because that is what I do to relax and get away and just be out and about with people. And I thrive off that. Talking about how Samson was hair and Superman is sun. I feel like my strength is built from people and relationships and communication. And one of the nicknames they have for me is called the convo because I always talk about having a conversation. But that's how I believe you fix issues. You get the right people in the room, you have a conversation, and you fix issues. And so I just love being around people and watching people smile and watching people, just enjoy every bit of life that they can, hoping that I made an impact in that.
Awesome. One piece of advice. We always end with this. So do you have something that you would like to share with the listening and watching audience here at our podcast today?
Yeah, and I got 2 or 3 that I went with for a while, and then one of my friends gave me this piece of advice, and it's hard to sum it up better than that. But he always says that nothing is as good or as bad as we think it is. Hmm. And if you look at things in that perspective, then you maybe live less of that roller coaster of life.
Yeah.
So.
Excellent advice. Well, thank you for your public service, and thank you for joining us here on Bridging the Bayou. That is the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. I know today during this podcast, Parish President noted a number of different phone numbers and email or web addresses, Facebook accounts. We will be sure to link those in the show notes. So if you are looking to make contact, please be sure to check those show notes. And for now, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us once again at Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening to Bridging the Bayou, the podcast of Fletcher Technical Community College. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.